Welcome to News Now. I'm Ariel Onstad, and you're joining our coverage here on Fox Local as we continue to honor the late Jimmy Carter, 39th President of the United States. Here with me, I have Buddy Darden. The distinct pleasure of this man joining me here at the desk is wonderful because you're going to share a little bit more about your relationship with the late president.
That's right, Ariel. I met Jimmy Carter, who was just plain Jimmy, in 1966.
Incredible.
The first time he ran for governor. And I'd been student body president of the University of Georgia, and he sought out people who had been active on the campus. So I got to know him then, and he and a former roommate of mine, Hamilton Jordan, came over to campaign, and that is the time he ran unsuccessfully. But the amazing thing is I supported him back then, and he never stopped running for governor. He ran for governor unsuccessfully in '66, never stopped, and then was elected in 1970. But I do need to be very candid with you. I did not support him the first time, but I told him I wouldn't because I was committed to Carl Sanders, who had been the previous governor.
Right.
And my boss, who was the DA of Cobb County at the time, had appointed the
You were
DA,
navigating
my boss.
yourself.
So I explained that to got Jimmy Carter about to be governor, and he understood. He never held it against me.
Shows just what kind of man he was. And I want to draw your attention, Buddy, right here to your screen, because this is what our viewers are watching in real time. This is the processional through our helicopter video as it's making its way towards Atlanta. So we can see that hearse and members of the family as they come up this way. How did Carter eventually win you over?
Well, he won me over, of course, when he got the Democratic nomination over Carl Sanders. That was a big shocker, by the way, because the Democratic establishment, for the most part, was for Sanders. He had been a good governor. He'd been a progressive governor, and of course, Lester Maddox had been preceded Carter as governor. So we were ready for a change.
We've seen politics make that transition over time. I feel like the Democratic Party that we once saw back in the early 20th century through now, it's not fully the same. You know, we've seen those transitions, and you got to kind of live that out as you worked with Carter a little bit.
Fully the same. It's not the same at all. The Democratic Party has changed a lot.
Quite a bit.
And Jimmy Carter, by the way, his first race in 1966, he ran to the left. But then when he came back, he ran to the right of Carl Sanders and was able to capture the imagination of the people and the support. But the thing about Jimmy Carter, and the reason that he succeeded in so many things, is that he worked harder than anybody in politics I've ever known. Now, we can chalk it up to luck, you can chalk it up to the times, but I've never known anybody so intense and to work so hard. And it kept on going. After I got to Congress, a number of years later, he would call me about issues that he was interested in, and as well as Miss Carter. She called me several times about issues that she was interested in.
It's amazing to see the partnership the two of them had and how service and a good work ethic was how they lived their lives. You know, when Carter left the presidency, we saw that he didn't just sit idly by once his presidency was over. He said, I got to get to work and I've got to continue to serve.
You're absolutely right. He called me in 1992 when I was in Congress, and NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was up, and I was not going to vote for it. And I said, Mr. President, at that time he was Mr. President, I said, I've already promised Senator Lamar Plunkett from over in Carrollton, who had been his floor leader, I've already promised Senator Plunkett I'm going to vote against it because he had a textile plant there. And he said, well, I'll see about that. And so about 24 hours later, Senator Plunkett from down in Carrollton called me back. He said, Jimmy Carter has explained things to me, and I'm going to release you from that commitment, and you can vote for NAFTA.
Wow.
And here he is, hands-on now.
Yes.
In 1992, years after, 20-something years after he had left the presidency.
It goes to show the influence one can have and the value of communication, because just by having that communication, he was able to create long-lasting policy. He said, hey, let me call the guy that's holding you in a commitment and let's talk this through, and then let's get a deal done.
Absolutely. And don't forget about Mrs. Carter. She was a rock, and she was a real soldier, and she never let him rest, and was always on top of the issues as well, especially in the role of women. When I was in the state legislature in 1983, she called me up, and they, of course, had already been out of the White House for 3 years, and said, I want you to vote for the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. And I said, well, Ms. Carter, most of my people are against it. She says, remember to call me Rosalind. And so I said, well, Rosalind, most of my people are against it. But well, she said, don't you have a daughter? I said, I do. And so anyway, make a long story short, I voted for the Equal Rights Amendment. 43 out of 180 of us voted for it. People said that would be the end of my political career, and 9 months later, I was elected to Congress.
How did that make you feel?
Made me feel pretty good.
It's interesting to think about the fact that Jimmy Carter, and during his term as governor, hung the portrait of Martin Luther King Jr. in the state office. And at the time, that was probably not well received, but Jimmy Carter said, I'm going to think ahead here.
Not well received. The top of the Capitol almost came off because he had been portrayed, maybe not by himself, but by others, as a very conservative and a very racially conservative candidate. And all of a sudden he gave the speech that is so famous now that the time for racial discrimination is over.
Yep.
And it was. And so he did quite a turnabout once the campaign was over. And I've always admired him for it.
Oh, take a look at this, buddy. We see an American flag hanging down from a fire truck over the interstate as the hearse is passing by. That just gives you chills, doesn't it?
It does. My friend Chuck Bird down in Taylor County, Reynolds, Georgia, called me about an hour and a half ago and said that the procession had just come through the small town of Reynolds, Georgia in Taylor County on the way to the expressway. And he said, you don't have to worry about getting a speeding ticket today because all the state patrolmen in Georgia are involved in the procession here.
Isn't that right? And look at this. It's like a parking lot over on southbound 75 as people are completely stopped there on the interstate looking over to pay tribute to the president. Because for so many of us, right, it's before he was president of the United States, he was our governor, he was our state senator. There's a sense of ownership and pride in making sure that you bear witness to this moment in history, but also remember the legacy that he left behind. And I think so many people are, even if they have no personal memories with President Carter, they're honored to take part in what we're witnessing today.
Well, let us also remember he was a great president. I just got back from Panama, where my daughter is stationed with the Justice Department down there.
And
he is a national hero.
Because
had it not been for him, the canal would not have been properly turned over. So he is a hero, and they'll probably, all the flags will probably be half-staffed down there. And I'm sure there are kids down there named Carter after him for the contributions he made. And so
incredible.
He did many great things as president. He had some bad luck with the economy and also some bad luck with the hostage crisis. But on January the 20th, 1981, I just been elected to the legislature, and we took a bus down to Plains, Georgia from Atlanta and greeted him when he flew back into Plains from having just ceded the presidency to Ronald Reagan.
what was his reaction when he saw you?
He said to the group, and I never will forget, he says, today I've ascended to the highest office of all.
U.S. citizen.
Private citizen.
Oh, buddy. It really makes you think about the legacy that any one of us could leave behind. We don't need to be president to make a difference.
That's true. You don't need to be president. But you got to work.
Yes.
And there's nobody who ever got outworked
No.
by Jimmy Carter.
I see tears in your eyes right now. What does this moment bring up for you? What makes you feel this way?
So many reflections going back to 1966. I'm 81 years old now. And he's been a part of my political life that entire time. Sometimes together, sometimes apart. But that's the way it is.
Yeah.
You might be friends one day, and then you might be at odds the next day, but you come together in the end.
The enduring respect that even if you disagree with a man's policies, you can respect who they are as a person.
That's right.
And I think that that's something that so many people who knew Jimmy Carter, even if they didn't agree with his politics,
Right.
they respected the man he was.
That's right.
Buddy, as you watch this, you can see cars slowing down there on the left side of the interstate. The helicopter's getting ever so closer to Atlanta. We know that they're about 30 minutes behind. If I had to take an educated guess, I would think it's because the counties that they were traveling through this morning, maybe they stopped a little longer to let people pay their respects. Maybe they slowed, maybe not, but something tells me that they're wanting to make sure people get to say goodbye. And this, of course, is done in accordance with the Carter family wishes as they're following this hearse.
Except one thing, Jimmy Carter was always on time, and he would not appreciate being one minute late.
1 minute late. Not even today, you don't think?
Not even today. He would want to arrive on time. But,
Must be from his Navy
yeah.
training.
But the Carter son has always been a special thing for Atlanta. In fact, my son George and his wife Casey were married there in 2007.
Wow.
They had the wedding ceremony there and then the reception.
Yeah.
And it was a very nice and well attended event.
Yeah.
But I'm
Carter
so
Center
proud
is
that they saw fit to use that venue.
Yes, a beautiful place to get married, and what a place to, in a way it's interesting that you would have such a relationship with the late president, and then they're getting married there. It's just like a cementing of all those memories fusing together in a way.
Whenever I saw President Carter beginning in 1966, I'd always introduce myself because there's nothing worse than somebody coming up to, do you know who I am?
Yes,
and that
of
kind
course.
of thing. So I must have introduced myself to him 30 or 40 times, but when we were going down the line at the inaugural ball, after we'd come up for the inauguration, my wife Lillian and I went up for the inauguration, and when he took office in January 20th, 1977, and we're coming through line, he says, "You don't have to tell me, you're Buddy Darden." but you've got to remember that people always need to tell the politician who they are.
Yes, yes. I think that speaks a little to your own humility, but it's nice that after a bit he said, "Hello, I remember you. I know who you are."
Right.
And it kind of shows a little bit about the relationship the two of you shared, even though you may not have been at odds at different times.
Well, again, like I say, I didn't support him the first time he ran for governor. I was committed somewhere else, but he appreciated that because the one thing that a politician doesn't like are people who tell you one thing and do
lip
another.
service.
And do another.
Yeah.
So I think he always appreciated the fact that I was honest with him rather than waltz him around, which happens in the Georgia legislature a whole lot.
Buddy, it sounds like some politics. But speaking of the Georgia legislature, we know that in just about 30 minutes or so, right? We are looking at about 2:45 right now, 2:46, about 15 minutes, and then another 15. Hopefully we'll start to see the hearse make its way into Atlanta. We know that around 3:30, because they are running a little behind, they will stop at the steps of the Georgia Capitol and allow a moment of silence for people to pay tribute. We know that the governor, of course, will be there, as well as other state dignitaries. And it looks like we're taking a live look there at the steps of the Capitol, where people are beginning to line up to begin this moment of silence and this pause. One thing I do want to mention, of course, is that after this, the hearse and Carter's body will be transported to the Carter Center, where he will lie in repose, and people can come and pay their respects to him until Tuesday. And the Carter Center is expecting 2,000 people an hour to come through to say goodbye. And you were telling me just a little bit ago you're going to be one of those people.
My wife Lillian and I will be going out to Dobbins for the departure ceremony when the family leaves to go to DC on Tuesday.
Okay.
And then we'll be attending the official state funeral at the Washington National Cathedral. So we're really honored to have been invited to this very special event, because they couldn't invite everybody, and if I had not been invited, I certainly would have understood.
Yeah.
But I'm very pleased and honored to be there.
What is, as we watch the hearse, on the interstate here make its way closer, you can see those clearly, the exit signs, so we know we're getting closer. What's your takeaway for building consensus in divisive times? How do you work to build consensus, maybe outside of the State House, but in everyday life as you work with people you may not disagree with, right? Because we saw this with President Carter. He was able to build consensus among people who didn't always support his policies or didn't always agree with him, but he got them there. How do you think we can do that?
Here's how we need to do it, in my opinion. You need to start out on the things you agree with, and then work toward the middle and work then on the things that you disagree with, rather than coming into the things you disagree with first, and then you blow the whole operation. So what you need to do is emphasize on what you have in common, and then take that and let that be the basis of working together the more difficult parts of it. And I think that since I've left Washington, that's been the real problem there, is that they start off disagreeing rather than starting off agreeing.
There's more that unites us than divides us. And if you start from a place of unity rather than a place of division, you can end up achieving a lot more and getting there in the long run. Apt words, because I think that, unity was something that Jimmy Carter really wanted to achieve among different groups of people. And
he was good at it. He always started off complimenting people he didn't like, and things about them he did like. And then he
kind of disarming.
It's very disarming. And of course his manners. He had impeccable manners, and a good Southern guy, And of course
parents who raised him right.
I keep on coming back to this because I was thinking about being at Rosalind's funeral over at Glen Memorial Church, and again, how all the people were there, and no one failed to mention her very strong influence.
Look at this. We have another fire truck, a ladder truck with a flag hanging from the mast.
Wow. Oh, that's
incredible.
So impressive. That's so impressive, Aaron.
Oh, it's beautiful. People slowing down on southbound 75.
Well, this is.
I'm so honored you can be here with me, buddy. And
well, I'm just honored to be here and just to say my words about it, because there's so many people, though. I'm not unique by any means. There's so many people who knew President Carter better than I, who were a lot closer than I, and so many people. 100 years is a good run, as you know.
Longest lived of any American president.
Of any American president.
You're saying he would have loved this. Why did you say that you think he would have loved this?
Because in a way, he has been redeemed.
I understand.
Because he left the White House age 56.
Yes.
And with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And most people considered at that time him to be a failure.
Right.
But now history has changed things. And he's now looked on as a great American hero.
Yeah. With hindsight, we realize where things are. Well, buddy, it's been incredible having you on. Thank you for sharing a little bit of the legacy of Jimmy and Rosalind, as we know she was his better half, so to speak, his rock, his partner, and everything.
Just like me, Carter married up.
It's a beautiful thing when I think people realize that they can't do it alone, and that having someone in your corner who will love you no matter what.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. And Jimmy said that about Rosalind. So, buddy, thank you so much for sharing your stories and emotion with us. We do need to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll continue to follow this procession. But it's been an honor having you here.
Thank you for having me. It's really been nice to be back.
Buddy, thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and send it to a short break.